Well, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Monique Bradley, tōku ingoa, he kai kōrero aho. I'm Monique Bradley and I am a storyteller. Welcome to Uncovering Authenticity with Monique Bradley. I am so excited that you're here with me today. I love doing this job. I love being able to help people tell their real stories, and that's what this podcast is all about. It's getting to know people behind the business, behind the brand, allowing them to take off those veils, those masks of who they sometimes have to show up and be, to allow the real them to get out there. And so you can connect with them and watch the magic or listen to the magic happen as we go through these chats. And today I am so excited to have this guest on the show. We met, it was one of those fortuitous moments on an aeroplane. We'd already been looking at each other in the Koru Lounge, and I'd checked out her fabulous clothing and her amazing jewellery and her amazing sneakers, and I thought, that's a lady with style, I need to talk to her. We end up sitting on the plane next door to each other. It was meant to be, and here she is in my studio. It's Tanya Osborne from Craig's Investment Partners. Woo!
Thank you.
How was that? Was that quite a good? That was okay.
Yeah,
I'm a very delicate flower when it comes to the openings of these podcasts.
No, love the energy.
Thank you. How funny was that?
I know.
I remember watching you, and you were wafting around the Koru Lounge, and I remember thinking, man, she's got style. We were both wearing black. But you had the most amazing sneakers on. I thought, man, this lady's got some charisma. She's got some personality. She's got style. She's somebody. And so then, having that moment of sitting next to each other. And then we find out we've been to the same events. We know the same people.
Yeah.
And we've got an event coming up later this year together as well. Yeah. What a small world. But Tanya, for people who don't know you and they don't know what you do, tell us, what's your story? What's the story? Start from the beginning.
Start from the beginning, right? Well, thank you for having me on. This is, it's great. As you say, it was one of those serendipitous moments, I think. And I loved, you had a hot pink cape on, and I was thinking exactly the same about you, actually. So look, I mean, I'm an investment advisor with Craig's Investment Partners, but yeah, my story sort of starts a lot longer before that. And interestingly, jewelry and clothes was a big part of my life, even when I was really young, because I had a grandmother who I thought was very glamorous, and she was Scottish, 5'0", and but she always had the most beautiful jewelry on. And there's a picture of me when I'm about 2, sitting on her knee, opening her cheddar locket, and just being intrigued and entranced with that. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah. So I grew up in Palmerston North, actually. So
I know Palmerston.
Yeah, probably not the style capital of the world, let's be honest. When I was a teenager, we, to wear moleskins and Airtex shirts with your fob chain was actually quite stylish, but perish to thought now. But I grew up there, and my dad's a vet, and which is why we sort of ended up in Palmerston North, because he has did lecturing at Massey University.
Oh wow!
But had his own private practice there as well, and so he ended up having a sort of practice where people would bring their cats and dogs, and then he specialised in ophthalmology. So
for animals,
yes. Yeah.
Did you ever think at any stage going through that? Because often I find in this podcast people are quite influenced by their parents and why they do what they do. Did you ever find you were influenced into going down that avenue?
Well, when we were young, we actually lived at the vet clinic. So the house that we lived in was attached to the vet clinic, and so people would bring their animals in, and the most exciting was when they bring a dog or a cat in the middle of the night, and they're about to have babies, and so we got and Dad would have to do a cesarean, and so you got to hold these little puppies and, make sure that they were alive, hopefully all of them. It was great exposure, but I didn't really think I liked being around animals and always grew up with them, but it probably wasn't my passion. And so whilst Dad's a vet, my mum's a teacher. And in fact, Mum went back to university when I was about probably 8 or 9 at Massey, because you could sort of do extramural, studying French and psychology. So, so she has quite a different sort of skill set.
Had she worked before she became a mum?
Yes. So she's a teacher.
Oh, teacher. That's right. You mentioned that's right.
So I had 2 different parents that were in different fields, but probably what they taught me was the importance of study. And so I think I always knew that I was going to go to university. It was just a case of not really knowing what that was. So I've got two younger brothers, and they're very sporty, and we're probably quite a competitive family.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes. So, but it was interesting. So I did grow up in quite a male-dominated household, which is why my relationships with my mum and my two grandmothers were really important to sort of have that time out of listening to cricket and, all those sort of things.
And wearing jewellery and celebrating jewellery.
Yes, and celebrating the sort of femininity. So, so I went to a gorgeous little private girls' school in Palmerston North called Carncott, and that was where I guess it was sort of taught that girls can do anything.
Wow.
And certainly my parents did instill that in me as well. So went to the school. There was only 100 pupils, and so just girls, and then ended up going to Palmerston North Girls High School. Enjoyed a great social life in Palmy. People always,
you probably know everyone as well, right?
You do, and it was safe back then, and so there was a good crew of us that all grew up together. But I kind of, going through high school, thought, no, I really do want to go to university, and I wanted to go to Otago because I'd heard about the Scarfies there and Dunedin and things, and so
it had a reputation.
Yeah, so I actually initially wanted to be a physiotherapist, and so I sort of looked into that. In fact, I wanted to be a physiotherapist for the All Blacks. If I'm honest,
you got a dream big, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I guess the first thing was I was sort of strongly encouraged probably not to do that. So that was interesting because I was probably 14 or 15, and I suddenly thought, well, okay, if I'm going to university and if I'm going to have the support of my parents, I need to do something else. So
wow. Were you quite conflicted by that?
I think I was, but I think because I always did the right thing, I felt that I needed to do something different, or something that my parents approved of me doing. And not that there's anything wrong with physio, but
no, physios are great. And the physio who works with the All Blacks is amazing.
Yes,
so
and so, but it was just that Dad said, well, if you're a physio, that's all you can ever do. And so I think really it was coming from a place of, well, you can do something that is broader. So I'd always been good at English. I'd done a bit of speech and drama and that sort of thing growing up. And so I thought, well, maybe I'd do journalism. So that was an option. But I finally settled on law.
Physiotherapist, journalism, law.
I know, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess across all of them, there's a lot of communication that needs to happen. So I'm seeing a common thread starting to appear.
Yeah. So no, in fact, I think one of my speeches at school was something I can't live without, and that was on my subject was on talking. Always been a talker. So that's communication.
Oh, that's beautiful. That makes my heart so happy. Yeah, I love that.
So that was. So I went off, and so at that time, actually, to get a job in any of the big law firms, and that's one thing, I guess, is that I've always been pretty ambitious. So if I sort of set my sights on something, then I want to be the best. So you need to do a double degree, which. And so that was a sort of easier choice because I'd always done economics at school, and I decided to do a commerce degree in economics. So off I went at 18 down to Dunedin, and it's funny now because my partner's got a daughter down there, and all the parents go down and make sure that the kids are okay in their flats and help them move. Well, we just got on a plane and said, see you later.
See you later. I'm off.
Yeah. And our parents were fine with that. It's quite a different
world now,
different
right?
World,
yeah.
Yes. So went down and had a ball. Like, it was fantastic. And some of my closest friends now are the friends that I made at Otago because you're so far from home.
And that shared experience that you're going through really bonds you together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So did that. But so it was a 5-year degree. And by about fourth year, I enjoyed studying the law. I was passing everything, but I didn't have a passion for it. I loved studying it, but I thought, I don't really want to be a lawyer.
Even because you, like me, you like to talk, which is, I think, brilliant, because that is a life skill that everybody needs to develop. Even the thought of standing up in court and fighting for somebody, that didn't spin your wheels.
Well, I think when you actually study criminal law, it's not quite like
it's not as glamorous.
It's not as glamorous as LA law.
Or suits.
No,
it's not that. Okay.
Yeah. So
because that's what I was thinking. That's the job I would want. Is I'd want to be in the courtroom fighting for someone.
Yes.
But no, it takes a while to get there, right?
It does. And of course, there are other facets of law that you have to study as well: property law, contract law, and so on. But again, I think it's a really good foundation. And I certainly, when I give anyone career advice now, and they're thinking about doing law, is definitely do it. But nobody back then 30 years ago said, oh, well, if you don't do law, you can do something else because, you kind of got pigeonholed into doing a particular career. So I thought, don't want to be a lawyer, but wanted to finish my degree because that's me. And actually did my last year of law school at Victoria in Wellington.
Great school, we're alumni,
Yes, which was fantastic. And that was in the old government buildings. And you're looking out on Parliament. And so that was great. So I sort of finished university with my law and commerce degree. And in fact, my first job was at the stock exchange.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's quite different from, I suppose it brings in that commerce side. And what were you doing when you started?
So I was actually working in their legal team, and the stock exchange back then is quite different to how it is now. It was sort of owned by all the brokers, and but it was a fascinating time in the early 2000s. It was sort of the .com boom. So all these companies were listing that, tech companies that were sort of trying to make it big. And so I did that for a couple of years, and had some exposure to some fantastic people, and then did the old Kiwi rite of passage to London. So by that stage, a lot of my university friends were in London, and so went over there and worked there for 6 years altogether. I did 2 stints over there. So I met my, now ex-husband over there. He's South African. And so we had a time over there, and then came back, realised we weren't quite ready to settle back into New Zealand, and then went back for another 3 years and actually had our daughter Gabby over there.
Oh, wow.
So she was born in London. And but then we moved back to Auckland because, it's hard being away from all your family, everyone.
Well, especially with a young child as well.
Yeah.
That you want to expose them to the family and the culture of their ancestry, I guess,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, beautiful.
So, but we left when she was 6 weeks old, and I think I say only somebody who'd never had a child would book a flight to take a 6-week-old, move country, and we managed to do it somehow, and via South Africa. So, are
you kidding me?
Well, her grandparents were there, so
you left London, South Africa, then New Zealand with a 6-week-old.
Yes, yeah. She was pretty quiet on the plane, actually.
You were so lucky.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
I know, but I think ignorance was bliss. You didn't I didn't know that, you'd heard screaming babies on planes before, but no, thankfully she was good. But it was important for her to go and visit her grandparents in South Africa,
of course,
at the time. And then, and so moved back here. Now, that was in the middle, she was born in 2008. So
global financial crisis.
Global financial crisis. So, having worked in legal and investment banking jobs in London, and which was fantastic for my career, coming home and, the world was the financial world was falling apart.
Wow.
I ended up having to, not having to take a job. I took a job probably earlier than I would have, having been on maternity leave, just because I wasn't sure that, I had quite a speciality in employment by doing compliance for sort of broking firms, which is what I've been doing in London. So, so that brought us back to Auckland.
I just want to tap into compliance stuff. You are like me. You're an extrovert like me. And I when I think of compliance, I think of a lot of paperwork and a lot of crossing T's and dotting I's and things like that. How does somebody who is a people person deal with all that? How did you make that work? Because it's almost like two different parts of the brain.
Well, it is. And I did struggle with that to a certain extent. Now, in London, you're part of big teams. So, my speciality was doing the compliance training for people. So,
okay. Still people focused
and giving advice. And so that was the bit from law that I really loved, was actually giving advice. And that's probably a thread that's gone right through my whole career in terms of what I do now. But and I think the business, so in compliance or legal, your clients are effectively the business. And so the feedback I'd always get was, you're very commercial and, you want to try and, so I viewed compliance as finding the way within the law and the regulations for the business to be able to do what they need to do. And so, yes, there are people in compliance who are very much detail focused and they like doing the monitoring and that sort of thing. I managed to sort of have other team members that did that.
So good.
And did all the, the sort of business facing side of things, which is sort of what brought me into overseeing a whole lot of investment advisors. So that's effectively making sure that the advice, so that the whole area around financial advice didn't used to be very well regulated in New Zealand.
Oh, right. Yes.
And, even the stock exchange, we used to be called the Wild West. And so, if you talk to anyone about 1987, there were a lot of companies that were listed that were probably doing the right thing. But they weren't.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
And lost a lot of people money. But
wow.
So the regulatory environment around the financial services sector has evolved a lot in the sort of 25 years that I've been involved in it. So my role was overseeing these brokers and investment advisors, making sure that if somebody was investing money with them, that they were giving them the right advice. And so around that time, I'd had some issues with fertility. I'd had, unfortunately, an ectopic pregnancy, which meant that I wasn't able to have any more children. And so that was sort of quite a stressful time, and stressful on my marriage. And so at that point, I thought, am I really loving what I'm doing? I'd been doing legal and compliance for about 14 years. My daughter was probably about 4 or 5 at that stage. And so I was overseeing the advice that these advisors were doing. And I thought, well, actually, if I look at my values and what I enjoy, giving advice. And so I essentially, in my kind of mid to late 30s, retrained to become an investment advisor.
Wow.
It's
so interesting. Often when I'm talking to people on these podcasts as well, often it's that when they change into doing what is much more in alignment with their values, or is their why or their purpose, it is often because of that wake-up moment in their life where they go, what the heck am I doing?
Yes. Yeah.
Those realizations. And there's a vast range of those wake-up moments.
Absolutely.
I remember mine was when I was sitting watching the Ellen DeGeneres show, and there were these 2 little girls on the show called Rosie and Sophia. Thanks, Pete. Sophia Grace and Rosie.
Yeah.
And this little girl, Sophia Grace, she had long dark hair, curly hair like I used to have.
Yeah.
And she was full of joy, and she was like this all the time. And I just thought, oh my goodness, she is so amazing. Yeah. I used to be like her. And then I went, where have I gone?
Yeah.
And I think these moments in our lives, and yours is, significant. I can't even imagine what you went through with the ectopic pregnancy. I hope I said that correctly.
Yes.
Because it's physical and it's hormonal and it's emotional.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a lot to deal with.
And I think for somebody who had been so used to achieving and
being a driver
and being successful, here was something that actually my body had failed at, and so
Wow.
there was a lot of processing that went through that, and a lot of that unfortunately led to the end of my marriage, because that was quite
So much pressure.
And I mean, I've got this beautiful daughter Gabby, who is 16 now, and actually I now realise that she is a miracle child, because I didn't realise at the time of having her that I wouldn't be able to have any more. So the one sort of upside of that was meant that I could focus on my career. It's easier with one child, and my ex-husband and I co-parent really well, and so we would have Gabby week about. But in the back of my mind, it was also the fact that, in going back to how I was brought up with my parents and at school, was that, you can be independent. And so I think that's something that's always been with me. And so I thought, well, when your marriage breaks up, you effectively have your financial position. So I had to think about how I was going to support myself and Gabby.
Yes, because you're having that financial position, but you've still got all the same level of responsibility.
Absolutely.
You've got to put a roof over your head. You've got to feed yourself and your child.
Yep, that's right.
On half the income.
Yes, yeah.
Goodness.
So part of changing careers meant that I could do that, but also being an investment advisor, that is about growing your wealth, and you
it's
ask
such a
about
positive thing.
Yes, about your values, and that's something that has always been really important to me. And so if I can learn from that, then I want to be able to impart that knowledge to others, because it is really important. And I've sort of found myself in the space of advising, I've got male and female clients, but particularly female clients, educating them around the importance of investing and the fact that we live longer. We often take...
Fair comment,
we take time out of work, so that means that you're not necessarily contributing to KiwiSaver. So by the time you get to retirement, it's, it can be...
quite challenging, right?
Quite challenging, so...
Wow. So that moment where you moved into becoming an investment advisor, that's a bit of a gear shift, isn't it, from the work that you'd done? So you retrained into this.
That's right.
When you first started that journey, how did you feel? Was it like coming home, or was it one of those things where you put on a coat and you go, yeah, this fits okay?
Well, in fact, quite the opposite, because it was that imposter syndrome that so many of us, and I say women, but actually I talk to men who
I hear it
from
a lot of men,
because I had been observing people doing this job, but it was, those first few client meetings, I was like, oh God, am I giving the right advice? And, and so it felt right, but there was certainly a sense of, I need to build up my confidence here. Yes. And, and outwardly you have to be confident, because people are giving you a lot of their life savings, or, they've sold a business. And so, but certainly in terms of waking up in the morning and looking forward to what I was doing each day, then absolutely it felt beautiful. Like I'd definitely made the right choice.
So you come across as very confident, very confident. So where do you think, you said you were, at the beginning, and I know you've been doing this for a long time, so obviously time brings confidence.
That's right, yeah.
But where do you think the source of that confidence comes from? What drives that in you?
Well, I think it's being, knowing that you're helping people, and it's relating to people, and it's back to I think, you said at the beginning, communication. And so the more I did it, the more I realized that people trusted me. And so that brings in its own confidence, I think.
It sure does.
And so you hear people's stories, and, and look, I've always loved learning. So, the sort of job I do, you can just immerse yourself in research and learning about different companies, because we are sort of traditionally stockbrokers. So back in the day, people would call up and say, right, I want to buy this share. And so we'd execute the trade for them. We do that sometimes as well, but it's, so you can learn the technical stuff, But yeah, the interpersonal skills is something that I think I've realised that not everyone necessarily has.
No, you're right.
And so I feel that confidence, knowing that I can communicate with people and build the rapport is what kind of gives you that intrinsic confidence.
Do you think 6-year-old you would have thought you were here now, where you are?
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess I used to always used to love playing banker, actually. So I always would steal the Monopoly money out of the Monopoly game and play my room. Because I was the only girl, my brothers were sort of out playing sport. I did a lot of, playing in my room and so, but I'm not sure. I mean,
it sounds like a connection, a natural connection.
It wasn't, you say about being around animals and wanting to be a vet. It's sort of because it's not something that anyone in my family has ever done. I've got family who are in business and done various things. But it was, I mean, even studying economics in third form, I was like, I quite enjoy this.
You get it. You get the system of it.
Yes, yeah. So
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think back to 6-year-old me, and I remember standing in the kitchen, looking in the kitchen window, particularly at night, because I loved it because I could see my reflection. And the window was my TV camera.
Wow.
And I would pretend I'd do my own cooking show. I'd make scones and I'd pretend to be Alison Holst.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And it's just, and I remember that. And so often, I'll ask different people if I'm doing different work with them, who was 6-year-old you? Is there a connection? Is there a story in there? So, usually at that age, before we tend to form too much around our identity and our brainwave changes, we actually already kind of know.
Yes. Yeah.
So if that's what you were drawn to was wealth and money, it kind of makes a little bit of sense. There's a bit of a common thread there too.
Yes.
So talking and money.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And that's effectively what you do
now. That's
now.
what I do now. And that's why
so cool.
I love it. And look, I mean, it's a real privilege. And I say this to clients, it's a real privilege to look after their money and help them meet their goals. And there's nothing better than being able to manage a portfolio for clients and they call up and say, oh, I need some money out for a holiday or a cruise.
And you can do that. See, I don't know much about your world at all.
Oh,
so
great.
I always thought if you put money into something like that, well, it's stuck in there for however long.
Yeah.
You do have the freedom to get it out.
Absolutely. Well, that's the brilliance. That's the brilliance of how we manage them, because we're investing directly in the stock market. You can have your money out within 2 or 3 days. Now, the fact is that investing is a long-term sort of thing. And, with KiwiSaver, that's why it's locked up till you're 65, unless you want to use it to buy a house. But no, so for our retired clients, we run a portfolio. They will get they can get a monthly income to supplement New Zealand super, or pull money out if they need a new car or want to renovate the kitchen. And so that is the beauty of portfolios. It's not locked away at all.
That's so different than what I thought of. And the reason why I say this is when I come into these chats, I find out a little bit about the person, but I don't find out about the industry because I'm one of those people that'll learn about it and suddenly I'm the world's biggest expert because I'm used to selling, right? That's my job. I worked in TV shopping doing stuff. And I don't want to be an expert on anything other than being myself.
Yes.
And so I had no idea that's how it works. I literally thought your money was locked up, which is great because it means it would stop me from spending it because I do like shiny things.
Yes.
But I had no idea. So it's almost like, and this is a really wrong analogy and this is not financial advice, I'm just putting it out there, but it's almost like a high interest bearing account that is creating money for you. It's almost like, I can't say it's a money machine, and you can't say this either from a compliance perspective.
So, I mean, a high interest account is, that's money that you've got in the bank, and, people talk about term deposits, interest rates. We had the OCR cut last week. So whilst that might be good for those of us that have mortgages, not so good for people that have money in the bank, because the interest that you get on the money that you've got there is likely to decrease. What we try to do with investing is grow that, and really our main aim is to beat inflation. So we want to get you a better return, because if you leave your money in the bank and inflation eats into it, then it's going to go backwards. You know, your spending power of that $1 might be 80 cents in 5 or 10 years' time. Whereas if you're investing it, that money's growing over time.
Wow, that's so cool. And how do you decide what to invest in?
So that's the benefit of working for a firm like Craig's. Because we're one of New Zealand's biggest wealth managers, we've got amazing support and amazing resource in terms of research analysts who will analyse particular companies, and they're the ones that have all the formulas and do all the detail analysis, I guess, on which is quite complex. But it's our job to then interpret that, and they will obviously recommend companies that we like. And, we're actually in the middle of the NZX reporting season at the moment, and so you may see in the media that particular companies have done well or not so well, and so our analysts will take that into account. My job is then to understand my clients. And so I mentioned clients who are retired. Well, obviously their objective is to get income. Some of my younger clients who are still working and they have their own income, they just want to grow so that they're growing that nest egg so that when they do retire, they've got the benefit of having those funds. So every client's different, and that's the best bit about the job is hearing people's stories as to what they're doing or what they did to get themselves into that position. And so then when we put together the portfolios, that will be based on what people's particular goals or objectives. So,
and how important is their personal values? As an example, I'm just thinking of somebody who wants to invest, but they're deeply committed to being a vegan, and you don't want to invest in animal products, as an example. Does that all play into how you choose their portfolio?
That's right. So we will always, in the first sort of meeting, we call it our discovery meeting, and it's literally that discovering about their goals, their aspirations, their sort of risk tolerance. That's the other thing, is that some people like to take a bit more risk than others. Some can afford to. But one of the questions we'll always ask is, do you have any ethical considerations around what you don't want to be investing in? Now, that can be quite broad, but the benefit of having a portfolio of direct stocks is that we can just exclude things.
Of course.
And so, sense. We sometimes use the example of somebody who's been with a particular bank and they have been annoyed with that bank, so they don't want to invest into that one. So we might choose another one or choose, a different sort of stock. So, and more people are thinking about environmental issues, about governance issues. They want to make sure that, there's a certain, that there's diversity on a board of a company, for example.
Oh, wow. So they're getting to that level of how they make those decisions.
Yes. So it's sort of called ESG investing. So you've got E for environmental, S for social. So how socially responsible are those companies? And then G is for the governance. So, the makeup of the board, how, the gender balance, the, ethnicity, that sort of thing. So
that's quite immense, isn't it?
It is.
Because I'm thinking about too, coming from the last 12 years of Pete and I working in marketing and understanding that marketing world, and looking at factors, the whole PESTEL model on how that influences buyer behaviour, as an example. And it could be, political, environmental, it could be social, all those things. So you're doing the similar sorts of things, because of course that would change how people invest or sell their shares, as an example, right? All of those factors. Even for Kiwis, the political scene in America can potentially affect what our investors experience here. Is that right?
Well, it can, yes, because we're investing into the US as well.
Right.
And so, but the thing is that the portfolios we run are incredibly diversified, and so
and that reduces risk.
That
right?
reduces risk. Yep. So I'm not sure if you've heard the expression, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yep, sure have.
And so we will make sure that we're investing in different geographies, we're investing in different industries, so that you protect. So, one particular country may not have been doing particularly well, but at the moment, say the tech stocks in the US have had a great run. So that's, that you can sort of have those differences, which then contributes to the overall performance of the portfolio.
Oh, so interesting, so interesting. So the point of this whole podcast, everything that I do is largely to help people understand different industries, different people, why they do what they do. But also because I believe that every single person that I interview, through their life experience, their lived experience, their work experience, gathers some sort of wisdom from what they do. That if they could tell that to 16-year-old self, or if they were on the TED Talk stage, they would share that wisdom. And I like to think that one day this is going to be a TED Talk level stage as well.
Absolutely.
You've got to start small, but
yes, yeah.
I can't
dream big.
That's it. I can't yell the loudest, but I can set lots of whispers out there.
Indeed.
So what do you think if you were wanting to advise a friend, or not? I'm not going to use the word advice, because that opens up a kettle of worms, or can of worms. But if you could share a piece of wisdom with somebody, and it was your moment on that TED Talk stage, what would you tell them?
I think it's going back to understanding what your values are. And actually, and even at 16, I think you're starting to form some of those. But just do something that you really enjoy. And so, my daughter's 16 and I have these discussions with her, and, she's seeing me working in a pretty male-dominated industry, and she has decided she wants to do an electrical apprenticeship.
That's so cool.
And because she's really practical and she loves it. And I think, good on you, because you're doing, and I'm trying not to be tiger mother, which in fact I'm not, I've let her sort of choose her own path, which has been really important. And I wish I'd done the same, because, I have done different things, and I don't regret any of the path that I did take, because I have learned a lot. But I think I probably would have got a lot of better career satisfaction if I'd started off doing something I was really passionate about and sort of sat with my own values.
But you're here now.
I'm here now, yes. Always learning, learning.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now, I want to finish up today with, you said the other night when we were at your offices with those wonderful people who are all training to become speakers for Women to Watch coming up in September.
Fabulous event.
I know, I'm so excited. There was one key line that you said which has resonated with me, and I've actually quoted you to other people when I've been speaking over the last couple of weeks, and I really want you to share, because obviously, like you said, you have male and female clients.
Yes.
However, when you're speaking at a women's event, this is kind of your tagline, and are you cool to share that?
Absolutely.
Go ahead. The microphone is yours.
Yes. And actually some of my female colleagues would give the same message, but a man is not a financial plan.
Oh. Do you know, I was at an event last night and I quoted you on this and the whole room erupted because it was mostly women, and they just went, that's really, really good.
Yes. And so, look, I mean, for my journey, it's meant that, I want to be financially independent, but it doesn't mean that you can't have a man in your life. It doesn't mean that you can't, have joint finances, but it's just being aware of it and not, a lot of women just leave all the financial decision-making up to men. And, so part of what we do at Craig's, we've got a women's wealth program. And so that's all about educating. I tell a lot I too. So
I think that's great. And
far and wide.
Similarly, for those out there that might think differently, a woman is not a financial plan. It's up to you, right?
Exactly.
It's up to you. I heard a quote somewhere that said, if it's meant to be, it's up to me.
Yes.
There you go. That's such a good one. Yeah. Finally, because it's just in my head, a quick question. When it comes to investing, how much do you need to get started?
You can start with as little as you want. I think there are providers that can let you start off with $1,000, right up to people that have sold businesses for $1 million. But the question is, get started.
Oh, that's so good. That's a mic drop. And that is why I love this podcast. Tanya, thank you so much for joining me today in the studio. I'm so grateful. If people want to find out more about you and the business, the organisation, how can they get in touch?
Yes, so as I said, I'm with Craig's Investment Partners, Tanya Osborne. We've got a fantastic website, and so you can search me there.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing time and space with me today. And thank you to those of you who are watching and listening. Now, the boss has told me that I have to tell you to, if you've enjoyed this, like, subscribe, share, and do all that kind of stuff. And somewhere around this video or this audio podcast is the links to Tanya if you want to reach out and get in touch directly, because I know you will love her. She is dynamic. She's amazing. She's bubbly. She's vivacious. She is fabulous. And we all need a little bit more fabulous in our lives. So do get in touch. Tanya, once again, thank you so much for joining me in the studio. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you, Monique.
Round of applause, or thank you. I know this is so cheesy, but I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
And thanks to you for watching. I'm so delighted to have you here. Big shout out to Pete Ward behind the scenes, who is my producer and director and my boss. Thank you, Pete. Couldn't do it without you. And thank you to you. I better head away. So grateful to have you join us. I'm Monique Bradley. This is Uncovering Authenticity. You stay magnificent. Ka kite anō, ino hora.